Hey guys, Thoth here. So today I wanted to take a look at Hammerdins in 2.3, specifically Holy Hammerdins. Crusaders now have a new 6-piece set called the Seeker of the Light, and this 6-piece set buffs the shit out of Blessed Hammer. The 2-set bonus is every use of Blessed Hammer that hits an enemy reduces the cooldown of Falling Sword and Provoke by 1 second. Provoke is our main Wrath generator, as well as a utility spell, and as you can see with the 4-set bonus, 50% less damage taken for 8 seconds after landing with Falling Sword. So having reduced cooldowns on those is very important. Paired up with CDR, you're actually going to be able to keep that 50% damage reduction up 100% of the time. And the last set bonus is the 6th set increased the damage of Blessed Hammer by 750% and Falling Sword by 500%. Now the latter is not really important for that, but the 750% Blessed Hammer damage, however, is super important and is the only reason that hammers are viable this season. So to swap on over and look at our skills, I will be using the Limitless rune with Blessed Hammer. This is a holy rune, so this will be a holy build, and you'll see why in a minute. When your hammer hits an enemy, there's a 50% chance that a new hammer will be created at the location of the enemy hit. This can only occur once per hammer. So basically, this is a 50% coefficient, so it doesn't matter how fast or slow you attack, 50% chance with every hammer cast that you'll get another one cast going in the opposite direction. So that's a lot of damage, and it also pairs well with Bane of the Stricken, which we'll be using in this build. Every hit from Bane of the Stricken will apply a debuff to the enemy, so this is very important. Now, what you'll be using for this ability here will depend on what you're going to be using for your rings. If you're using Focus and Restraint, Justice is what you want to use for your second half of your Restraint, Focus and Restraint to get the damage buff. It doesn't really matter what skill rune you use. I mean, I use Holy Bolt or Crack sometimes. Burst you can use if you want a very small RNG chance to stun, but wouldn't rely on that by any means. If you're not going to be using Justice, you do want to swap over to Iron Skin when you're not using a generator. And I like to use the Flash rune because it allows you to move through enemies unhindered when you get hit, 60% movement speed increase for 5 seconds, and allows you to move through even wall. Walling fix from Elite Packs, you can move through it when Iron Skin is procced. So that way you don't have to use Falling Sword to get out of it or move out of a near-death experience. Falling Sword actually has a ridiculously long animation, as you can see here. Like that's... In that time, I could have casted 4 or 5 hammers with the chance to proc even more. So it's not ideal. You don't want to cast Falling Sword too much. The next ability that we're using is Provoke. Provoke is your Wrath generator, as I said. We're going to be using the Too Scared to Run rune with this Provoke. Taunted enemies have their attack speed reduced by 50% and movement speed slowed by 80% for 4 seconds. This slows them and makes their animation so slow that it's actually easy to get out of almost everything that the enemies try to hit you with, unless it's some form of projectile attack. And also, for every additional enemy near you when you're taunting, you get an additional 5 Wrath. So if you're in a big pack of mobs, you get a full bar of Wrath every time you pop this, and you can pop it every couple of seconds. So it's very easy to keep your Wrath up and spam really fast with your hammers. For our next ability, we'll be using Laws of Valor. We'll be using the Critical rune, which gives you 100% increased critical hit damage, as well as 15% increased attack speed. There's no substitute for this unless you're in group play. And then you can use Laws of Hope if you want, but I would definitely recommend sticking to Laws of Valor Critical. And the last ability that we're switching to here is Akrat's Champion. We'll be using the Prophet rune. Prophet, as you can see, gives you 150% additional armor while Akrat's Champion is active, as well as the increased damage in Wrath Gen while it's up. Paired up with our CDR and use of Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac in our cube, you'll have this up permanently. This will be up pretty much 100% of the time. You may have a small gap of like 1 to 2 seconds where it's not up, but generally this will be up before Akrat's Champion is finished its passive that's already active. And again, this is a death passive. If you die while Akrat's Champion is active, you don't actually die, it just eats the Akrat's Champion, and you'll still have the effects of the ability until it wears off. For our passives, we'll be using Blunt. 20% increased damage by Blessed Hammer. Now, the Justice portion isn't really important. We don't use that for damage, but 20% flat increase to our main attack ability is absolutely amazing. Fervor we'll be using because we're using Johanna's Argument for a flail. So one-handed weapons, the 15% CDR for this is super important, as well as the 15% increased attack speed is nice as well. I don't think that the 100% increased attack speed on the affix for the weapon influences our attack speed cap. I could be wrong about that one, but I don't believe it does. So that 15% is also a nice little boost there as well. And we have Indestructible is here for a second death passive. Self-explanatory. As soon as you die, this keeps you alive for another 5 seconds afterwards. Gives you a second chance to get out there and save yourself and prevent your death. And Finery, 1.5% strength for every gem socket into your gear. At the end, you should be having 9 sockets in your gear, which gives you 13.5% strength on Finery. That's huge, especially when you think that strength gives you armor, and armor is boosted by Akrat's Champion. These two synergize very, very well. And for the 5th passive, because you're going to want to roll a Hellfire Amulet for when you start doing Gryphs, you're going to want Holy Cause for your 5th passive, which increases the amount of damage you deal by 10%, as well as healing you by 1% of your total life every time you deal holy damage. So you're dealing holy damage through Blessed Hammer, you're dealing holy damage through the crater that's left on the ground after using Falling Sword. So you're definitely getting a bit of heals there. Like I said, use 4 passives and get the 5th on your Hellfire Amulet however you can. Now to quickly swap on over to our gear here, you're going to run full 6-piece set. On your shoulders, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, Resist All, and Cooldown. On your helmet, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, and either crit or Blessed Hammer damage. That's entirely up to you, based on where the rest of your gear is. That's up for you to decide. Again, with all these, try and get secondary resist on your gear if you can. If you can't, it's not good, but it's preferable to get it if you can. You're going to be socketing all Strength gems, as you see. And looking here, you want Strength, Vitality, and all Resist on your chest. And if you can, for your secondary, you want to get reduced damage from melee attacks. It's very helpful. 2 choices you have for belts. The first one is the Witching Hour. This is your primo choice. You really want to go with this one if you can. Attack speed and crit hit damage in your belt is super, super good. As you can see, I got mine from a Demon Hunter friend of mine. I spent almost 80,000 shards this season on belts alone and still can't seem to get one of these suckers no matter how hard I try. Crafting and the like, can't do it. But if you can't get a Witching Hour, a good substitute is String of Ears. The secondary here, reduce damage from melee attacks by 26% up to 30%. Super helpful, and you can roll full resist stats on that, and that's a nice boost to your defenses. But make sure when you're taking this off and putting Witching Hour on instead, you maybe supplement a little bit, get a little bit of vitality on an extra piece. For our weapon, you're going to want base strength on it if you can. Percent damage is nice if you roll high on the damage. Socket is obviously crucial. Now, for your other stat on it, you can switch between reduced cooldown of skills. Vitality is not bad either, because survivability is always good. Or you can get, life on hit. Life on hit is also pretty good to get in your weapon, because you can get like 20, 30,000 on there, and it's pretty helpful. For your boots, you're going to run on strength, vitality, and move speed. I use move speed because then you can get more Paragon points to spend on your strength, which will then synergize well with Finery and Akrat's Champion. As well as you're going to get Blessed Hammer damage on your boots. And your shield here, strength, vitality, what you roll on it after that is entirely up to you. I like to go with life for a bit of extra survivability, and I rolled crit on this. You can roll Blessed Hammer damage on it. You can roll reduced cooldown. This is a pretty niche piece where you can kind of just fill in the gap with whatever you need. I, for one, need crit, so I've gone with that. Blessed Hammer damage is increased by 245% for the first 3 enemies it hits. So when you're in a rare pack or you're killing a Rift Guardian, the damage boost is absurd, and this really helps. So getting this as high a percentage as you can is super important. As you can see, focus and restraint. Some people like to roll the strength off because of the way Finery works, and I'm not above 800 Paragons yet. I would like to keep up with the strength on my rings if I can. Alternatives, if you're going for solo play, are Unity and Convention of Elements. Again, strength double crit on these is good, or you can go double crit elite damage on Unity if you like. That's entirely up to you. For bracers, we'll be using Gabriel's Van Braces. You're going to want to roll holy damage, crit, plus your stats. As always, these are very basic. The secondary on this is important to roll high, because when your blessed hammer hits 3 or fewer enemies, 96% of its wrath cost is refunded. That goes up from 75 up to 100%. So it's very important to get that a high roll so that you can keep yourself very efficient with your wrath costs, especially when you're a single target. And not having to worry about provoke when you're killing Rift Guardians is very helpful. And like I said, with your Hellfire Amulet, you want to roll Strength double crit on this. You can roll 20%, but because this has 1,000 stat cap and we benefit so much from Finery with Akrat's Champion, I generally like to keep Strength on this if I can, and double crit, as I said. I got very fortunate with my roll on this one. It took me about 45 amulets to get this, and now amulets are pretty easy to farm. You can get 3 per set of Ubers now, generally, so that's pretty easy. And I've got the Holy Cause passive. That brings up, as I said, one of the 5 passives that you want to be running. And so to quickly just give you a quick run over of the gems, using Bane of the Trapped, phenomenal gem. Outside of Bane of the Stricken, this is by far the strongest gem. The aura for reduced movement speed, as well as the increased damage on things that are slowed. 33% multiplicative damage is huge, always has been, always will be. A definite, absolute choice. Bane of the Stricken, because of how fast we attack and limitless proccing extra hammers, this gives you 1.35% increased damage. The coefficient will change based on the level. Mine's kind of low. each time you hit an enemy, you gain that debuff on them, that 1.35%. That doesn't go away no matter what you're doing. Even if you die, walk away, come back, however many times you've applied that to that enemy, that has that applied to it forever. So by the end of fighting Rift Guardian, you generally have somewhere between like 700 and 1,000% bonus damage because of how many times you hit them with Stricken. And of course, 25% increased damage is huge, very, very helpful. Lastly, this is one that people kind of switch out sometimes for Taeguk. I don't recommend it. This is way more beneficial than Taeguk as far as I'm concerned, but if you want to, you can swap it up. Obviously, you get the attack speed for every stack, stacks up to 15 times, but what's more important is that 1% cooldown per stack. 15% cooldown on your Gogok is super important, and this is why I use it over Taeguk. I know that Taeguk gives you armor, and that would synergize well with Akrats. Again, that's personal preference. I've seen people use both in the top 10, but I prefer Gogok just for the cooldown, and that's entirely up to you. So that's pretty much wraps it up for this build. You're going to... Oh, and lastly, the Kanai's powers, you're going to want to run Furnace for your elite damage. You're going to want to run Hexing Pants to Stutter Step. As you can see when I'm running, it's a pretty massive boost to my damage there. And for your jewelry, you're going to want to run Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. This will help keep your Akrats champion always up, help keep your Laws of Valor off cooldown as much as possible. You want to try and proc this Laws of Valor when your Convention of Elements rolls on Holy. The amount of damage that you can do when that's up is pretty insane. I've seen hammers go from doing like 2 billion damage to 11 billion damage and more, depending on how many Stricken stacks are on. So definitely synergize those well. Pay attention to it. The more attention you pay to it is the more you're going to get out of it, so it's very important to do that. And so yeah, that about wraps it up. And potion. I use the Life on Hit potion. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I've got a little bit of gameplay coming up just after this. 58 Grift Clear that I did, I think, third day into the season. I ended up getting ranked 14 when I did it. That'll be using Focus and Restraint as well as Leoric's Crown because I didn't have Hexing Pants then. So you'll notice I won't be stutter stepping as much in that video. I'll actually be tanking a fair bit of stuff. And you'll also probably see that I use Falling Sword a little bit too much. I wouldn't recommend using it that much. You definitely want to try, every time you use Falling Sword, you're roughly giving up about 4 hammers. So you don't want to use that too much. Just basically use it to keep the buff up for your damage reduction. And other than that, hammer away. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, subscribe, let me know what you thought about the video, if you think there's anything you can improve, and I hope you guys have a good day.